Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, June the 12th, 2023. There aren't a lot of things happening in the world right now. A lot of things are escalating in their ridiculousness. And this past weekend, I had a little bit of an emotional reaction to a lot of these things happening. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to share some of the strategies that I utilized, coming both from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint, as these are different times that we are in right now. And there's a lot of different stimuli that are coming, a lot of different stimuli, a lot of different sources of information, and a lot of different stories and agendas are happening at the moment, and these are all very new, and it can be hard to navigate these types of situations and times. So to recap, there are stories of aliens happening. There was a situation, I think it was past in this past week, where there were some aliens that were sighted, and people actually what's the word, interacted or have some footage of some of these aliens interacting. There has been news coming out of the CIA about aliens. We have the fires in Canada that have been lit all at the same time. I took a break from the news for this past weekend, so I'm not even sure what the status is on these fires, but I'll get into that a little bit later. We also have the Ukraine offensive that's been happening. And we have different agendas and different perspectives and propaganda coming from one stream in the West, where they are insinuating that Ukraine is winning. And then we have reality of Russia annihilating every attempt they have on creating an offensive. So we have different narratives, we have different agendas going on, we have propaganda coming at us from every angle, right? We have the economy and how that is going on right now. We're currently within a transition of monetary systems. We are in World War III right now, and we are in the midst of history being written, which is a really interesting time. And so it's very difficult to kind of navigate these things. We also are in the midst of the push for 15-minute cities. We are in the crux of cultural Marxism. And, a lot of things are happening right now where we can't even trust our own eyes and ears, because AI is taking on a sudden dramatic, like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, AI has sprung up to be something that is worth noting, and being concerned about. And we have images coming up, where, it's been even come up in the news, actually, that Ron DeSantis has potentially utilized AI to attack Trump on his stance with Fauci. There's altered pictures. Videos can be altered. Videos can be created. Video and audio. There's now AI now where they can manipulate an audio recording or create a voice that is identical to a person. So say like mine, perhaps. Or so it is a time where we can't trust our own eyes and ears, because of the things that we see might not be real, right? And this can create a lot of anxiety and feelings of overwhelmness, and hopelessness, where if you can't believe your own senses, I'm not going to swear on this video, but that's it's definitely something to take note of, right? And a lot of this stuff can lead you to have feelings of anxiety that might be different. You might have a control over your emotions. You might have learned to control your emotions as you've grown older as an adult, between interactions with other people and whatnot. But this type of psychological warfare is a lot different to regulate your emotions on, because we're not used to this type of stuff. And especially for people who are not awake or who have not been awake and are currently perhaps starting to pay attention, starting to see things from a different perspective and starting to be awake, it can be an overwhelming feeling of that your whole world is a lie, right? And that can be really hard to deal with. And so you want to kind of catch yourself in, you want to notice what's going on. If you're noticing a certain emotional reaction, or you're starting to act differently to your family or to the people in your life, people at work, because of an underlying issue that's kind of making your emotions react to a certain way, making you perhaps be irritable or snapping at people, or perhaps you're getting depressed, you want to kind of nip this in the butt before it gets out of control, because you are more easily manipulated when you have a high emotional reaction to things. Okay, so this is something we need to be careful of in this current age. Okay, and so we also seen this kind of stuff with the war in Ukraine. You know, a lot of images that we see on the news are recycled images of forest fires, recycled images of wars, or during the pandemic. You know, we had pictures of um, hospital wars and whatnot, and then it comes out later that those are old, right? And they're recycling these things to instill fear in us. So this is something that we need to be mindful of. So last week we had the forest fires, and you know, I was starting to see that a lot of them were set at the same time. And having asthma, I had noticed that there was smoke in the city of Barrie, and I started to get a little anxious because this was getting a little bit too close to home. We know that there is an agenda going on with the climate, and that this was perhaps lit at the same time to further this agenda. And so, having read 1984 many times, Brave New World, and We, you know, and with everything else that's happening in the world, it was kind of overwhelming and creating some anxiety within myself. So I decided to take a break from the news. I knew that it was compounding with a lot of the other stories that were happening around the world, right? A lot of things are going to be getting a lot more chaotic. I'm going to be honest with you. I know this is going to be happening, and this is why it is important for everybody to create a strategy to remain grounded, to remain in a place of logic, and know how and when to remove yourself from these external stimuli that can elicit these responses from you. Okay. I'd mentioned in a previous video that I uploaded on my one tarot channel, my one spiritual channel, that I believe we're in a spiritual warfare. We're in a spiritual war. As I decided to turn off the news, to not live in fear for a period of time, to kind of de-escalate myself and to regain my composure and to kind of regroup. That same day, someone from my past was reaching out to me and trying to instill fear into me by threatening me with certain things. So, you know, that it's just as I shut one stream of negativity, another one was trying to manifest itself, because this is the time we're in. So that was interesting. Now, from a behavioral analyst perspective, I'm a behavior analyst by trade, more commonly known as a behavioral therapist. And so I work with individuals that mostly have autism and developmental disabilities. And a lot of them have maladaptive behaviors, a lot of them have aggressive behaviors. We do a lot of skill building, but so one of the things that I do is decrease maladaptive or dangerous behaviors and increase more more appropriate behaviors that can replace those negative ones, right? Because we all do things, there's always a function for a behavior. And in order to eliminate one behavior, you have to match the function with a more appropriate behavior that gets the same result, okay? And I also teach emotional regulation to individuals. So I'm going to talk about some of the strategies that I teach them and some things, strategies that I utilize for myself. Now, as adults, perhaps watching this, you might think I don't need to learn emotional regulation. I can kind of navigate myself, or you or not. Like, you might have depression, you might have anxiety. Now, these are things I'm kind of gauging this to the community that I'm talking to. So this is not going to be utilized as a strategies for autism, okay? But one thing you want to pay attention to is that you don't want to leave your like trying to come up with strategies, having a toolbox. You don't want to try to come up with tools to use or strategies to use when you're in a heightened state already, because you're at that point, you're not thinking straight, and you're mostly focusing on how you're feeling, and your reaction is taking control over you, and you're not going to be able to think logically, right? So you want to come up with strategies. Now, I have gone through therapy myself in the past. And so this is kind of cognitive behavioral therapy strategies as well. So you want to make a list of things that you could probably do to distract yourself or to kind of ground yourself back down, and get out of your headspace, right? So you want to maybe focus on things that are more tangible activities. So doing yard work, um, doing yoga, doing high intensity exercises. These are some things that I did over the weekend. So I shut off my computer. I did some high intensity interval training. I did some yoga. I walked. I did some yard work. I did some. I'm just moving into my new place, so focusing on making my environment more beautiful and more homey, and spending time with people that you love. Cooking. These are all things that you can do, but it might be helpful to make a list, because if you're not used to using strategies, especially in a time where the things that are, I hate using the word triggering, but things that can be triggering these new emotional responses or these new triggers, like these 5-dimensional warfare, these psychological warfare strategies or tactics that they're using to keep us in a state of fear. You might want to write a list of things that you can do when you notice that you're starting to, your emotions are starting to change, right? And so you need to start paying attention to your emotional states. And so as a behavior therapist, what we do when I'm working with a client, and we take data on behavior, we define what it is, and we kind of look for patterns. And so it's called ABC data. Okay, so it's called antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So what is the antecedent? What happened right prior to the behavior? Your behavior can be your emotional response, and then the consequence of that behavior. So right now, what I'm going to say is to just focus on what the antecedent of your emotional state is. So if your emotional state is being triggered by watching the news or things that are happening in the news, you might come up with a way to mitigate that occurring, okay? So that you don't have to do it forever, but until you're more in a more calm state where you can go back and not be as emotionally charged, where you might start reacting to things and start being illogical, right? So practicing mindfulness is something that is very useful as well. So practicing mindfulness is not like some hippie thing. It's just being present in the moment. So, even washing your dishes can be meditative. You just, instead of being in your head and thinking about things, you focus on how the water feels on your hands, how the plate feels coming out of the water, if you're washing your dishes by hand, or, walking on grass, or feeling the wind on your body, feeling how the grass feels under your feet, getting really tactile and coming down to the material, your material existence, bringing yourself down. That's what grounding is, right? So focus on what you can control, and take a break. You know, sometimes when you the internet can be very addicting, and you think you're going to miss something, you know, especially if you're into all of this stuff, right? The world is going to keep revolving. You're not going to miss anything. And if you did, someone else can tell you about it. The world's not going to end if you don't go on the internet. Okay, I got a lot done. I was really productive these past few days. And you know, I went on Twitter today and it was still the same that it was when I left it. So I just wanted to tell you these things. I wanted to share my experience, and some tips to navigate these weird times, because things are going to get a lot more chaotic and a lot more questionable. And you know what? If it's hard to believe, then you know it might be a little bit too hard to believe. So take everything with a grain of salt and turn it off. The world, I really, really needed this past weekend to regroup and recenter. And so I recommend everyone to do that when things get a little bit more hectic and chaotic out there in the world. Okay, until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Have a nice day.